Hello, my name is Tucker Johnson, and I am joined to you today by my colleague, Melissa Torres, and we are coming to you live from Seattle and Colombia, respectively, and we're going to do a little mini lesson. You may have noticed that we're doing a lot more translation or localization workshops and stuff, free stuff that we're just putting it out there. And a lot of that just has to do with like what I'm working on right now. I've got a class that I'm teaching at the Middlebury Institute down in Monterey. It's going to be next month. So I'm refreshing my material and I'm using you guys here on LinkedIn as my guinea pigs, essentially. So you guys are my test audience. So with that, welcome, Melissa. How are you today? Why don't you take a second and introduce everybody to what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you, Tucker, for the invitation. So basically, we decided to record a video because we've gotten several requests in the last few weeks from our LSP clients who want to understand better what their options are for quoting fuzzy rates and machine translation discounts, right? So this is going to be pretty basic for a lot of regular Nidmzi live listeners, but we like to be inclusive of all experience levels. So if this isn't for you, then perhaps you can share it with somebody you know who is maybe more junior in the industry. Right, Tucker?
Yeah, and exactly. Thank you for that introduction. So that kind of the caveat today is, if you've been around, a lot of regular listeners of Nidmzi Live are going to know kind of the stuff that we're going over today, how to calculate translation memory rates and whatnot. But it's good to be a quick refresher. And if you do know what's up, and perhaps you have some suggestions, leave those in the comments and we can get to them. Like I said, this is in progress material. So any suggestions you have that we can improve it, then those would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here, shall we, Melissa? Jumping right in.
Oh, yeah.
I want to just take a quick moment what we're going to talk about really quickly. I'm expecting 10-15 minutes. We're going to talk about per word pricing. We're going to talk about translation memory pricing. We're going to talk about machine translation memory pricing. These are the three things that we're going to be going over today. Really simple. And to provide a little color commentary, we're going to look at some sample tracking sheets and word count reporting methods that are popular out there in the industry. Let's start off looking at weighted word counts here. Weighted word counts before we get into weighted word counts, I want to talk about, and this is why we do these live, to test these people, because I don't want to talk about weighted word counts yet. I want to talk about this other thing that I don't even have on this slide. Give me one sec, folks. What is your experience with weighted word counts, Melissa? Is this something that you guys have been you work with a lot in your career, or are you more? How do you break down fuzzy rates?
Well, yeah, I have the chance to work with weighted word count. I would say for 4 years. And then we also, touch machine translation rates as well. I think it's the same formula, I would say, the weighted word counts, right? I would be more interested in what you have to show us about machine translation rates, right? Because that's something that it's new. It's like, well, not new, but everybody's talking about right now. They want to figure out how to charge it, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's get right into this. We're going to do a soft reset here, and we're going to go back into it here. So, talking about weighted word counts. So, first of all, how are words charged, or how is translation bought and sold in this industry? And if you've been around for more than a week, then you know, of course, already, that translation is charged per word. So if I want to translate a document with 600 words from English into French for France, then I'm going to be charged whatever the rate is for France by 600 words. Typically, this is the oversimplified version of it. However, technology has a way of coming in and completely desimplifying things, and we're going to talk about TM rates, or translation memory rates. And if you look here in this weighted word count example that we have up here, we have the words broken down into different categories. We see repetitions, we see 100% match, we see 95 to 99% match, 85 to 80, 94, so on, down to no match, and then of course the total. So this example that we're looking at here is a total of 600 words that we're translating into a language, and we've run it through what we call a translation memory, which is essentially a database of strings or sentences, words that have been previously translated for a client, and if those sentences come back up again in a future project, then they are counted as a 100% match. If it's exactly the same, or if it's a little bit different, if the string is a little bit different, then it's going to be 95%, 85%, 75%. And Melissa, stop me if I'm missing out on anything, if I'm missing any key points here.
Of course, I'm here. Don't worry.
So that's what we have when we're looking at a basic breakdown for from a TMS. Now, each of these different words or categories of words is going to require a different amount of effort, so to speak, to translate that. So the logic goes that I shouldn't be paying a translator the same to translate a 100% match, because it's already been translated before, it's in my database, as I do to translate a no match, which is to say a sentence that has never been translated before. It is not in my translation memory. And usually a breakdown will look something like this. So I'm paying my translator, or I'm paying my LSP 25% of the per word rate for repetitions, as I would for the standard rate. So let me repeat that, because the devil's in the details. So if my standard rate for my per word rate is 10 cents per word, I charge 10 cents per word. For the repetitions, all of the words that fall into this category of repetitions here, when you run your TM analysis, those are going to be charged at 2.5 cents per word, or 25% of 10%. So that is how we get these TM rates. So when you're talking about fuzzy matches, is another word that's often thrown around out there. You can call them TM rates, you can call them fuzzy matches, you can call them whatever you want. It is what it is. But that's how we get those. Now, moving on, what does that translate into? Though when we start looking at this, what does that translate into, like an actual tracking sheet? So I'm going to bring this up full screen here so that perhaps you can see it a little bit better. And when we're tracking things by fuzzy matches this way, the tracking sheets can get a little bit cumbersome, because essentially we need to be tracking the data for each of these different categories. So if I have a handoff and it's into two languages, French and German, instead of having one row in my tracking sheet for this handoff, what I'm actually looking at having is a bunch of different rows for French and a bunch of different rows for German, because each one of those handoffs needs to be broken by language, of course, and it also needs to be broken down by the fuzzy match. So here's a tracking sheet that you can see, just a quick example, and I'm happy, I'll put in the comments, I don't know if we have anyone watching us live, but I'll put in the comments a link to the Google Sheet where I created these sample tracking sheets. And so that's it for fuzzy matches, weighted fuzzy matches, right? So we're talking about TMS match or TM matches or fuzzy matches, that's what we're talking about. Now let's get into this weighted words, and that first slide should have said fuzzy matches, not weighted words. But when we're talking about weighted words, this is a concept that not all LSPs use, not all buyers are aware of, but it's something that can be very useful because it kind of cuts out some steps in the tracking sheet and kind of simplifies things. And essentially it's taking the same principle here. We have repetitions, 100% matches, 95% matches, all the way down the line to no match. But instead of charging a rate for each one, we're applying the multiplier rather than to the rate and then tracking each thing individually. We're applying that multiplier to the word count, and we're getting a weighted word count. And this weighted word count is going to be lower, presumably, if there are, is going to be lower than the actual word count. So let's look on this first line here. Repetitions. In this sample handoff that we're doing, which is 600 words broken down into different fuzzy matches for French, in this sample we have 100% repetitions. And when we multiply that by the multiplier for the TM rate, we get 25 weighted words for that. Same thing with 100% matches all the way down the line. And if we look at the total for the weighted word counts column, we see 290 words rather than 600 words. Now what's nice about this is I can take the 290 words and I can just multiply that by the total price per word. I don't need to track each individual line individually. And to show you what that looks like, we'll take a look at an example tracking sheet using weighted words. Now, compare this to the one that we had just previously here, if I can bring it back up. This versus this. And, I mean, the difference speaks for itself if we look at a comparison between the two here. But really quickly, I want to spend some time before we get into machine translation. I want to spend some time on this. You see here these weighted words. You're just listing one line per language. So, project 1 for French, 600 words. Calculated that, you run that through the formula, and you get 290 words, times that by the rate, and you get 3190. So everything fits nicely into this nice little row right here. Now, the downside to this is you're losing fidelity of your data. You're losing valuable information, and you're hindering your opportunity to run complex analyses in the future. I've been talking to clients here at Nidmzi who came to us wanting to understand, like, what would the financial ramifications be if they changed their fuzzy rate structure. So let's say a client comes to you and says, look, we're willing to give you a 1 cent per word raise on all of your new words, but we want to update your fuzzy match structure, and instead of getting 25% for repetitions 100%, you're getting 20%, or you're getting 15%, or we're not paying for reps anymore, or something like that. And if you don't have all of that data that you need broken down by the fuzzy matches, which I'll bring back up right here, this is what I'm talking about. If you don't have all of this data, then you're going to be kind of screwed because you're not going to be able to run that analysis. So it becomes a cost benefit. It becomes a trade-off whether or not you want more data, or whether you want to not be tracking everything like massively, because there's a cost. There's a cost that comes with tracking. There's always a cost that comes with tracking data. So now let's get into it. Melissa, you said you wanted to talk about...
one question.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. So why would be important, to track this not in the weighted word count model, because you understand that you can't, right? But with the fuzzy matches. What do you do with that data? What do you show? It's belong to a KPI, to a SLA, what it is? Well,
I mean, it's for, first and foremost, it's for billing, right? In order to be able to bill for the words. So, as part of the contracting process, you're going to negotiate rates with your clients for new words. For each of these languages, you're going to negotiate fuzzy matches, and you need an agreed upon system between you and the client to be able to say, this is how many words that I'm charging you for this month. When it comes to KPIs and SLAs and different things that you want to track, yeah, sure, you can get fancy with that. A popular thing that some clients like to track is total cost per word. Total cost per word. TCPW or TCW, right? And this is it's basically saying, all right, I'm getting charged, I'm getting charged 11 cents per word for France, what is my total cost per word on that? And I'm going to include in that all of my overhead. I'm going to include in that all of my project management costs. I'm going to divide all by my word counts. And this is all word counts. It's not just for one language. And you can watch that metric go up and down. And that metric's going to go down, of course, as your weighted word count goes down. The bigger delta that you can get between the weighted word count and the total word count, generally, I mean, that's indicative of how healthy your translation memories are. Does that answer your question?
All right. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Okay. It's good.
Nice. Well, let's talk about machine translation discounts. So I was just responding to it, and this is why I called Melissa. I was like, "Hey, you want to jump on a live stream with me?" Because I was just responding to a client about this, and they have a machine translation discount. And I'm not going to say the client confidentiality. I'm going to, all numbers are made up. All names are fictional for the purposes of this. But let's say I've negotiated with the client that I'm going to charge you 60% of my new word rate for machine translation. So, and this happens all the time. You'll have a client that you've been working with for a long time. You have a nice fuzzy rate breakdown. Everything's agreed upon. You have pricing agreed upon. Everyone's happy, and then they'll come and say, hey, we want machine translation. We're going to be rolling this out, and we expect a discount. And you can either give them a discount, or you can run a pilot project and assess the effort. There's a bunch of stuff you can do, but at the end of the day, if you want the work, you're going to have to give them a discount, right? So different ways to bill for machine translation. This little quick live stream is not meant to be comprehensive, but one of the most popular ways is just a flat discount. So I'm going to charge you 70% for machine translation compared to what I would charge you for a new word typically. And so in that regard, it's very much like a translation memory thing, right? And you see on the screen here, if I pull this back up, this 70% is represented here in this additional column that I've added. You could very easily just slide this over here and make this 100% into a 70% and change the name of that column from TM rate to TM/MT rate. But the reason this is significant is because you're only applying this rate to the no matches. You're only applying this rate to the new matches. I've seen some arrangements where if you're really confident with the capabilities of your MT, this could start creeping up into your TM matches. You're using prioritizing MT over 75% match, for example. But typically it replaces the no match. And the reason this is important is because machine translation is machine translation. Your translation memories, your translations. It's your translations. It's translations that previously you had signed off on and said, yes, this is a good translation, print it, right? Machine translation is none of those things. So first and foremost, you're going to want to apply the translation memories to all of those words, lock those in, and then apply the machine translation or run the MT on the new words, essentially the words that weren't already picked up by the translation memory. And once you get this, essentially you can just treat it the same way that you would treat anything else, which is have it as a weighted word count over here. There's also, it can be handled in a tracking sheet. We looked at two different ways of tracking, with the fuzzy tracking and then the weighted word tracking. And you can do either one if you're utilizing this methodology for machine translation. You can really do either one. It's no big deal. It just depends on how much you like that data, how much you like copying and pasting that data, because a lot of times there is a manual component to that. So, was that clear? Any questions, Melissa, about machine translation pricing?
Yeah. So, how do you decide what will be the rate? You mentioned 70%, but why?
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that was outside of the scope of what I was originally planning to talk about here today. But in reality, a lot of times the rate is the rate because that's what the client says the rate is. And that's all you really need to know. You either make it work or find new clients, right? But that's a very cynical view of it. This is why I mentioned, I kind of breezed over it earlier. I would recommend, like, it's always a good idea to run a pilot project to assess the feasibility of using machine translation, assess the quality of the output, assess the edit distance, and based upon the outcome of the MT quality assessment, or based upon the edit distance, then you're going to calculate the rate. Now, in general, my general rule for everything when it comes to how do I figure out a rate is that the rate that you're charging your client, really, if you want to play it safe, the rate that you're charging the client should accurately, to the extent possible, accurately reflect the rate that you're paying your vendors for those same services. Because for LSPs, we're services. We're a pass-through organization, right? The services, the core service, the things that we provide translation, they're pass-through. We usually don't have in-house translators. So that means we have pre-negotiated, just like we have pre-negotiated rates with our clients, we have pre-negotiated rates with our translators as well. So try not to get too fancy and do something like, I'm going to give my client a blanket discount of 80% or 20% for MT, whatever it is. But internally, I'm going to pay my freelancers hourly, right? It's like, it could do that. It might work out nice. But in my experience, whenever I've had a project or an account where the sell rate didn't accurately reflect or wasn't driven by the buy rate, it's eventually come back to bite me in the ass.
Okay.
Yeah, but the MT and there's companies, the world isn't what it used to be back when I was slinging files and managing these type of things. And there's companies out there that do this. They assess MT. We were just talking to Jaap van der Meer over at Taos on a Nidmzi live episode about this data enhanced machine translation. And the thesis behind this is essentially it's enabling companies that typically wouldn't have the resources or the corpus of data necessary to train machine translation engines, and making that more accessible to companies, giving that capability to companies that traditionally wouldn't have that capability. So machine translation is becoming more accessible. It's becoming more ubiquitous. It's 9 times out of 10 talked about in the same sentence as translation memory. These days, it's not something special. It's not something fancy. It's just part of what we do. And that's why, one of the reasons why I wanted to put together this quick little video presentation, whatever, and talk about it.
Yeah.
So next time someone asks me, I can just send them this link.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, with that, I think we're good here. Gosh darn you, Canva! I love you, Canva, but I hate you, Canva. Let's plug our thing tomorrow. Tomorrow, Melissa and I are going to be talking about cost control and negotiation. Melissa, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, it's basically around, helping PMs kind of negotiate, right, internally for LSPs. Help me here, Tucker.
Yeah. No, this is for LSPs, and this is a workshop that we're doing. We do private.
But it's from a PM perspective, right?
Yeah.
For project managers.
For project managers, but project managers, me, I like to say project management is not a job, it's a function, right? So vendor management is not a job, it's a function. So, project managers negotiate with vendors too. Project managers negotiate with clients. It's not just salespeople and account managers. Project managers negotiate with clients every single day. So register now. Seats left available. There are still infinity seats left available, so make sure that you get yours. And with that, I think we're good. See, Melissa, I told you this was going to be nice and simple today.
Easy and short, yeah.
Easy breezy. So, with that, I I will bid you guys goodbye. Thank you very much, Melissa. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Tucker.
Yeah.
See you guys tomorrow.
Yeah. And with that, Melissa, I appreciate you. Chat, if there's anyone down there in chat, I appreciate you. Everybody who contributes to Nidmzi Research, everybody who joins our Nidmzi Live, I hope to see you tomorrow when we go live at 7 a.m. Pacific time to talk about cost control and negotiation for project managers. See you there.